Panama City, Panama. Republic of Pan America, 1330 Zulu. The president of Pan America was one of the few people in the world that drove an independent vehicle through city streets. After the Shanghai Accord and the banning of the old fossil fuels, internal combustion engines were relegated to the sand drifts of the old United Zaire or the southern waste. Reports were Petrova let the fumers run rampant east of the Caucasus. There were a few solar cars in the rural areas, but only the most important of people cluttered the walking streets in town. The streets along El Presidente's route had been cleared and his motorcade raced through the largest city in the Western Hemisphere. President Octavio de Mendoza IV quietly read a news report over his ledger in the back of his limousine. Yet try as he might, he simply couldn't concentrate. Today was probably the most important day of his career, a day that would live on in the history books for millennia to come. Today, they were launching the Destiny of the Skies, the first ship bound for the moons of the Scarlet System, as it was called, or rather, the first shuttle of the Destiny. He looked out of his sunroof. It was probably above him now, 20,000 meters up, and in a little over 10 hours, the first shuttle would be launched from a top-secret location in the Pacific. His limo proceeded into a tunnel, cutting off his view of the sky. He turned back to the news in hopes that he might be able to concentrate. Then he felt the vehicle start to slow. After a second, he realized where he was along his route and sighed. He was about to get some bad news. The limousine came to a stop, and he soon heard a knock on the glass. General Servano entered with the President's Chief of Staff, Eric Brown. The general sat down across from de Mendoza, while Brown took his place at the President's side. As the vehicle began moving again, de Mendoza folded up his ledger. "We're going to make history today, General," he said in an unenthused tone. "No, sir, our enemies are." "Who is it now?" the President asked apathetically. "Muslim fundamentalists in Bahrain? Militant Confucian monks, penguins and Juarez massing in Antarctica?" Servano was one tinfoil hat away from a straitjacket. He was the most paranoid of all the neocons in El Presidente's administration. He found anti-Pan-Americanism in the bureaucratic bribery in Samarkand. If some Aussie makes a crack at Pan-American Gaul surrounding the launch, he'll have de Mendoza in the bunker beneath the presidential mansion. "Let me guess," the president mocked. "Pirates, right? Their little space dinghies are going to overwhelm the Air Force up there with the Destiny, eh? Tell me, have they figured out if Black Goat is named for his goatee or a pet goat yet?" The general went just the slightest shade of red, but those that didn't know him would never be able to tell. He had little tics that showed his embarrassment. Undeterred, he set a ledger in front of El Presidente, showing a blurry satellite image of a man's face. The image then split itself in half to show a mugshot. "This is Tseng Tratevnia," he said, not bothering to enunciate. He butchered the name. Even de Mendoza could tell that. "We believe he was born on Kamchatka Island, to a Chinese mother and a Russian father. He traveled throughout the country as a child. He enlisted in the Russian military under a fake name at the age of 16, he continued. Since then, he's popped up in every major conflict throughout recent history, including Pake's Revolution on Mars and the period of anarchy on Titan. None of the three of them chanted the phrase, anything but anarchy. But then again, not one of them had been within a year's journey of Saturn. The Russians and the association had nothing to do with Pake, de Mendoza said. Titan was another story. The association was there, though it was mostly Arabian troops. Samarkand had very little to say about what went on up there. It was mostly regional governors, who wouldn't have had any command over the Russian military on Earth. "He defected from the Russian military after a year and a half, sir," Brown replied. "He's a mercenary," Servano explained. "Soldier of fortune." He looked back to his file. "He speaks 13 languages at least, including Russian, Mandarin, English, Spanish, Portuguese." "I get the point," de Mendoza nodded. "He's cropped up either as a novice recruit or an auxiliary soldier at MI6, Chinese intelligence, Antarctic Security Agency, Continental Peace and Security Force." "Okay, well what do we need to worry about a mercenary for?" he retorted. "Do you know who Black April is?" Servano asked. "I know what Black April is," de Mendoza replied. Everyone knew what Black April was. It was a dark time in Pan-American history. Granted, it happened before the Panamerican Revolution, yet it was in their history nonetheless. Even to this day, Pan-Americans had no interest in extending the southern border because the ruins of Paraguay stand at the gates, and everyone remembers Paraguay for burning the economy to cinders. "Black April wasn't just the coup that led to the Shanghai, sir," Brown explained. After the collapse of southern South America, millions of people died. Those that survived resorted to living off the land or pillaging from the former cities. They organized themselves into communes or gangs and cartels. One gang in particular called themselves Black April, Cervano added. They're a rebel guerrilla group that blame the North for their circumstances. They are believed to be responsible for numerous train bombings in the southern states. They won't be happy until we've gone from the map. And they're planning a disruption for today, de Mendoza deduced. We believe they're planning to destroy the Destiny, Brown replied. Blow her out of the sky. That's impossible, El Presidente replied. He knew that there were going to be hitches today, but some anarchist gang in the southern waste blowing the Destiny out of the sky? Impossible. Of course, the Chinese would like to undermine Pan-American hegemony, and the Aussies were always looking to set themselves up as a superpower, and there was a roster a mile long of fundy evildoers from Yemen to neo-Taliban uprisings in Kazakh steppe. But South American guerrillas? Brazilian anarchists? Those llama fuckers might be pumping in tankers full of coke, and the Antarctic were known to buy old caches of guns from the ruins of Buenos Aires, but no mere cartel could have the ability to sabotage the Destiny. There's enough weaponry aboard to light up the night sky, said Cervano. That weapon storage is nowhere near accessible by civilian hands, the president argued. He found himself remembering the reports of train bombings in the south. There was one just last month in, where was that? Bolivia? Did anyone die in that one? He couldn't remember. Besides, he said, everyone aboard that ship was approved by the highest authority. Hell, half of them came across my desk. Tetravnia can pick any lock you can put on that storage, Brown argued back, and he knows how to work any explosive. Just whose side was Brown on here? He tended to yawn through most of Cervano's inane ramblings and intel briefings. If he'd been won over, what kind of mercenary would go on a suicide mission? Cervano said calmly, there's also the possibility that one of our competitors is assisting. The vehicle went silent. The wheels thumped over cracks in the pavement. Nobody wanted to talk about foreign intervention unless there was proof. And Cervano did have a bad habit of pointing fingers at Seoul or Zurich for every little problem. Hell, the man was this close to blaming the Wei Jun Guard for his missing remote. Chatter has increased 1,000-fold since we announced the launch, Cervano reasoned. We're ahead of schedule and ahead of the rest of the world. The Aussies aren't far behind. If they were bankrolling Black April... General, I don't even want to think this unless you have some evidence to back this up, de Mendoza commanded. I know people are watching. Hell, we're watching them build theirs. It doesn't mean they're plotting against us. I will not have my presidency marked by a global war. Regardless of our competitors, Brown quickly cut in, Black April is proving to be a serious threat. Brown's still pushing it, even though Cervano's basically implied the Brits have got snipers trained on this limo. Okay, de Mendoza said, taking a second look at the ledger. What you're telling me is that you suspect this Black April cartel of hiring Tetravnia, and they're going to try and destroy the Destiny. Is that correct? That's what we believe, sir, Cervano replied. Let's step up security on the ship, he began. With all due respect, sir, Brown replied, perhaps we should consider launching at a later date. Absolutely not, El Presidente retorted. How serious was this? Brown knew how important this launch was to the administration. He'd been there, briefing the president on all the specifics of cryogenics. Maybe he needed to do something about these guerrillas and that Russian mercenary, but postponing was out of the question. We're about to make history today. You need to find this mercenary and deal with him. Don't you worry about him, sir, Cervano replied. We've got someone at Homeland Security. Brown was shaking his head. De Mendoza didn't even need to hear it. Cervano had one of his assets. The assassins Seoul and Samarkand know about, but Panama denies fervently. De Mendoza didn't particularly like them because of this political bullshit they sometimes caused. But those incidents were few and far between, and a good bluff usually handled things. Like Petrova didn't have secret agents off the books, or the damned Wei Jun Guard. Maybe one of Cervano's men was just what those guerrillas needed. She's very... Cervano chose his words carefully. Qualified. Tetravnia has been spotted around the Mediterranean. 2 partial body scans, Athens and Milan, in the past 18 hours. But our primary concern should be Black April, Brown quickly added. Reposition the Navy, de Mendoza ordered. Make sure the Galapagos are well protected. Aye, sir, Cervano grinned. I want hourly updates, the president decreed. The general nodded. Sir, he asked almost hesitantly, about the rules of engagement for our friend. Don't do it, sir, Brown interrupted. El Presidente snapped his attention back to his chief of staff. First he's on board for action, now he's not? Reposition the Navy, yes, Brown agreed. Maybe even send in an asset. Maybe. He waved his hands downward in a slowing gesture to show his hesitance. But strict rules of engagement. We're talking untraceable poison, that sort of thing. Put a tiger in a cage and it ain't much of a predator, Servano quipped. I've seen the file on the one you want to send in. Purple Heart, Silver Star, a roster of illegal ops, damn near 2 pages. Servano grinned. Al Presidente said, are we talking about? What was the expression with the assassins? Quiet or noisy? Servano began sermonizing. On a historic day of the utmost importance. You know what that kind of time with the low O2 on Mars can do to you. Enough, de Mendoza said. He tired easily of the banter. Servano, do what you will. Let me know as soon as Tetrevnia is dead. Brown's face fell. The limo came to a stop to let Servano out. The general quickly got into his own chauffeured vehicle, which had been tailing them. Brown lingered a minute in the limo's doorway. You realize what you've authorized him to do, don't you? Keep me informed, Eric, the president said impatiently.